She helped a billionaire's grandmother on a flight. And everything changed this Christmas. Emma Carter never imagined that holding a stranger's hand could change her life forever. But that's exactly what happened at 35,000 feet, in the midst of turbulence, when everything around her shook as if the world were collapsing. The plane lurched violently. The oxygen masks swayed, the lights flickered, and the elderly woman next to Emma began to panic. Oh my God, we're going to crash." Her voice trembled, her hands gripping the armrest so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Emma didn't think twice. She reached out and held the woman's cold, trembling fingers. "It's all right. I'm here. Breathe with me." The woman gripped her hand as if it were a lifeline. Her blue eyes, wet with tears, locked onto Emma's. And then suddenly she began to laugh. A nervous laugh, punctuated by sobs. "Sorry, darling. I'm ridiculous. I've flown 1,000 times, but today I woke up feeling like something was going to happen." Emma squeezed her hand tighter. "Nothing's going to happen. We'll get home safe. I promise." The turbulence continued for long minutes that felt like hours. And during that time, the woman, who introduced herself as Eleanor, began to talk. She spoke about life, about grandchildren who no longer visited, about the husband she'd lost years ago, about the empire she'd built that now felt cold and empty. She spoke about Christmas approaching and how she no longer knew what it meant to be surrounded by people, yet still feel alone. Emma listened to everything. Every word, every pause, every sigh, because she knew that feeling. At 38, Emma also knew what it was like to feel invisible. She knew what it was like to work hard and never be recognized. She knew what it was like to smile politely while colleagues received promotions she deserved. She knew what it was like to spend another Christmas alone in a small apartment, with cheap gifts and postponed dreams. When the plane finally landed in New York, Eleanor squeezed Emma's hand one last time and looked deep into her eyes. "Honey, you saved my life today. And I never forget when someone treats me with genuine kindness." She took a business card from her soft leather purse and placed it in Emma's hand. "If you need anything, call me. Anything at all." Emma smiled politely, tucked the card away without looking at it, and waved goodbye. As she walked through the airport, she thought it had been just a kind moment, an airplane conversation. Nothing more. She had no idea that the card tucked away at the bottom of her purse was about to turn her life upside down. 3 days later, Emma was in her tiny Brooklyn apartment, wrapping cheap presents in recycled paper. The artificial Christmas tree in the corner blinked with faint lights. Snow fell outside, covering the streets with a white blanket that should have been magical but only made everything feel colder. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Emma hesitated, but answered. "Ms. Carter?" The voice on the other end was masculine, controlled, cold as ice. "My name is Alexander Whitmore. My grandmother, Eleanor Whitmore, insists that I contact you." Emma remained silent, processing. Eleanor Whitmore. The name echoed in her mind until it finally clicked. She pulled out the card she'd tucked in her purse and read, "Eleanor Whitmore, founder, Whitmore Hotels. She told me about the flight." His voice continued, emotionless. "And now she has this fixation. She wants you to spend the Christmas holiday with us in Vermont and help with a special project. Frankly, I think it's absurd, but she won't take no for an answer." Emma felt her heart race. "I don't understand." "Neither do I." He sighed impatiently. "But my grandmother is persistent. So what do you say? Will you accept or not?" Emma looked around the empty apartment. She looked at the poorly wrapped presents. She looked at the sad tree in the corner. And then, without knowing exactly why, she heard her own voice say, "I accept." There was a pause on the other end of the line, as if he hadn't expected that answer. "Fine. My assistant will be in touch with the details." He hung up without saying goodbye. Emma stood still, holding the phone, her heart racing and a strange feeling in her stomach. Something between fear and excitement. She didn't know it yet, but that cold phone call was about to lead her to the most transformative Christmas of her life. Before we continue, a heartfelt request. Please subscribe to the channel. I would be very grateful for your support. 2 days later, Emma sat in the back seat of a silent black car, watching the landscape change as they left the hustle and bustle of New York behind. The city lights were replaced by narrow roads, snow-covered forests, and mountains that seemed to touch the sky. The driver didn't speak. He simply drove with precision, following a route that seemed rehearsed. Emma gripped the handle of her old suitcase in her lap and tried to calm the thoughts spinning in her head like an out-of-control carousel. What was she doing here? Why had she accepted the invitation of a woman she barely knew? And who was this Alexander Whitmore, who had spoken to her as if fulfilling an inconvenient obligation? She pulled out her phone and typed his name into Google. The first result was a photo, a man in an impeccable suit, defined jawline, dark eyes, and an expression bordering on intimidating. The headline read, "Alexander Whitmore transforms family empire into billion-dollar giant. But at what cost?" Emma read quickly. Alexander had taken control of Whitmore Hotels at age 28 after his father's death. In just 10 years, he'd transformed the regional boutique hotel chain into a nationally recognized luxury brand. But the article also mentioned that he was known for being ruthless, distant, and obsessed with efficiency. Longtime employees said he'd cut family traditions, holiday parties, and even the famous Christmas event that Eleanor used to organize for the staff. Emma turned off her phone and looked out the window. Now she understood better. Eleanor wanted to bring back the warmth her grandson had stripped from the family empire. When the car finally stopped, Emma felt the air leave her lungs. The Whitmore estate wasn't just a house. It was an architectural masterpiece of glass, wood, and stone, nestled in the Vermont mountains as if it had grown there naturally. Enormous windows reflected the snow and trees. Warm lights glowed inside, creating a welcoming contrast to the cold outside. The front door opened before Emma even got out of the car. Eleanor appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a soft wool coat, her face lit with a wide, genuine smile. "Emma, my dear, you came." She descended the steps with surprising energy for someone in her 80s and enveloped Emma in a warm embrace. "I knew you would come. I felt it on the plane. You have a good heart." Emma returned the hug, feeling something loosen inside her chest. "Thank you for inviting me, Eleanor. I still don't quite understand what I'm doing here, but you'll understand, darling. You'll understand." Eleanor took her arm and guided her inside. Come, it's freezing out there." The interior was even more impressive. Soaring ceilings, a crackling fireplace, furniture that blended modernity with comfort, and a delicious scent of cinnamon and pine in the air. But what caught Emma's attention most was the absence of Christmas decorations. No tree, no garlands, no twinkling lights. Only the fireplace and the snow outside served as reminders that Christmas was approaching. "I know what you're thinking," Eleanor sighed, following Emma's gaze. "It feels empty, doesn't it? This house used to sparkle at Christmas. Lights in every corner, cookies baking in the kitchen, music playing, staff and friends coming and going. But my grandson, well, he thinks it's all a waste of time." As if summoned by the mention, Alexander Whitmore appeared at the top of the stairs. Emma recognized him immediately from the photo, but seeing him in person was different. He was taller than she'd expected. He wore dark dress pants and a gray shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. He didn't smile. He simply descended the stairs with measured steps, his eyes fixed on Emma with a mixture of curiosity and distrust. "So you're the woman from the plane?" It wasn't a question, it was a statement. "And you're the grandson who doesn't like Christmas," Emma replied before she could stop herself. Eleanor let out a laugh. Alexander raised an eyebrow. "I didn't say I don't like Christmas. I just think there are more productive ways to spend time and money." "Productive?" Emma repeated the word slowly, feeling unease grow within her. Interesting choice of word. He crossed his arms. "And what word would you use?" "Human," Emma replied, holding his gaze. "I would use the word human." For a moment, silence filled the room. Eleanor watched them with an amused glint in her eyes. Alexander was the first to look away. Well, you're here. My grandmother will explain what she expects from you. I have work to do. He turned and started up the stairs. Alexander. Eleanor's voice was firm. He stopped, but didn't turn around. Be kind. He didn't respond. He just continued up until he disappeared down the hallway. Emma released the breath she'd been holding. Eleanor squeezed her arm affectionately. Don't mind him, darling. My grandson has forgotten how to be human. But you're going to help me remind him. That evening, after a quiet dinner served by discreet and efficient staff, Eleanor led Emma to one of the guest rooms. It was spacious, elegant, with a view of the snow-covered mountains. Rest, darling. Tomorrow we begin. Begin what exactly? Emma asked, finally gathering the courage to ask the question that had been tormenting her since the phone call. Eleanor smiled, a twinkle in her eyes. We're going to bring Christmas back to this house, and to my grandson's heart. Emma lay on the soft bed staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. She thought of Alexander, of his coldness, of his calculating gaze, of how he seemed to have built walls around himself. And she thought of Eleanor, of her laughter on the plane, of her desperate desire to reconnect her grandson with something bigger than numbers and profits. Emma didn't know if she could help, but for the first time in years, she felt that perhaps, just perhaps, she'd found a purpose that went beyond herself. In the following days, Eleanor revealed her plan. She wanted to recreate the Christmas traditions the family had abandoned, decorating the entire house, baking traditional cookies, organizing a party for the hotel staff who worked a few miles away, and even setting up a giant tree in the main living room. But Alexander cut all of that when he took over, Eleanor explained as they drank tea in the enormous kitchen. He said it was a waste of resources, that we needed to focus on efficiency. Emma felt anger rising in her chest. And the employees? What did they think? Eleanor sighed. They accepted it. What else could they do? Alexander pays well, offers benefits, but he took the soul out of the place. People used to work here because they felt like part of a family. Now they work because it's a job. Emma remained silent, absorbing it all. And that's why you're here, darling. Eleanor held her hand. Because you treated me like a human being on that plane. Not like a rich old woman. Not like an empire founder. Like a scared person who needed someone. And I saw in your eyes that you understand what it's like to feel invisible. The words struck Emma like an arrow. So help me. Eleanor squeezed her hand. Help me show my grandson that he can succeed without losing his soul. Emma took a deep breath and accepted. In the days that followed, they began. Emma and Eleanor went to the nearest town and bought decorations. Garlands, lights, ornaments, red ribbons. With that closed expression. He observed from a distance but never helped, never commented. He would just look and return to his office. But Emma noticed something. He stayed a little longer each day, observed a little more. And there were moments, brief, fleeting, when she saw something different in his eyes. Something that looked like memory, or longing. One afternoon, while Emma was at the top of a ladder decorating the front door with an enormous garland, Alexander walked past carrying papers. Be careful not to fall, he said without looking up. Emma stopped, surprised. It was the first time he'd shown any kind of concern. Thank you, she replied, but he'd already gone inside. That evening, while Emma and Eleanor were baking cookies in the kitchen, laughing, singing old songs, making a mess with flour, Alexander appeared in the doorway. He stood there, watching. Emma felt his gaze and turned around. Want to help? She asked, surprising herself. He hesitated. For a long moment it seemed he would say no, but then, almost imperceptibly, he took a step forward. I don't know how to make cookies. Eleanor laughed. Nobody's born knowing, darling. Come here. And for the first time since Emma had arrived, Alexander Whitmore smiled. It was a small, hesitant smile, but it was there. Emma felt something shift in that moment. Something subtle, as if a tiny crack had opened in the wall he'd built around himself. and she realized that maybe, just maybe, this Christmas could really change everything. Alexander Whitmore wasn't used to feeling uncomfortable in his own home, but since Emma Carter had arrived, something inside him was changing, and he didn't know if he liked it. She was everywhere, decorating the living room with Eleanor, singing softly while hanging lights on the staircase, laughing in the kitchen while baking cookies that filled the house with a scent he hadn't experienced in years. And worst of all, she looked at him in a way no one else dared, as if she could see through the layers of control and coldness he'd so carefully constructed. That night, after the cookie incident, Alexander locked himself in his office. He tried to focus on quarterly reports, profit projections, expansion proposals. But his mind kept returning to the kitchen scene, to his grandmother's smile, to the genuine laughter he hadn't heard in so long, and to Emma, to the way she'd looked at him when she offered help, without judgment, without pity, just openness. He closed the laptop harder than intended and stood up. He needed air. He went out the back door and walked to the wooden deck overlooking the mountains. Snow fell softly, covering everything with an almost sacred silence. He took a deep breath, letting the cold air burn his lungs. Can't sleep either? Alexander turned. Emma stood in the doorway, wrapped in a thick blanket, her loose hair falling over her shoulders. She looked smaller there, more vulnerable, but her eyes still shone with that quiet strength that unsettled him so much. I was working, he replied, turning back to the landscape. Liar, Emma said simply, walking over to stand beside him. You were running away. Alexander felt his jaw tighten. Running from what? From feeling, she replied, looking at the snow. From remembering. From realizing that maybe everything you built cost something you shouldn't have lost. He stared at her, surprised by her frankness. You don't know me. No, Emma agreed. But I know people like you. People who work so hard to prove their worth that they forget to live. People who build empires but lose family. People who have everything but feel empty. The words hit Alexander like punches. He wanted to argue. He wanted to tell her to go back inside. He wanted to put back the armor she was stripping away with each sentence, but he couldn't. My father died of a heart attack. He heard his own voice say, startling himself. He was 52. He was in the office, working on a Sunday, alone. Nobody noticed until Monday morning. Emma remained silent, waiting. I was 28. I took over the company because someone had to, and I promised myself I would never let it all fall apart. That I would never disappoint my grandmother. That I would make this place worthwhile. And was it worth it? Emma asked softly. Alexander didn't respond. Because it seems to me, she continued, that you've proven your worth to everyone, except yourself. He felt something tighten in his chest. Something dangerous. Something he'd buried long ago. Eleanor is sick, Emma said suddenly. Alexander turned sharply. What? Nothing serious yet, Emma explained. But she told me yesterday. Her heart is tired. The doctor said she needs to reduce stress and that... She hesitated. This might be the last Christmas she has the energy to truly enjoy. The world seemed to stop. Alexander felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. Why didn't she tell me? Because you're so busy building a legacy that you forgot to spend time with the person who is the real legacy, Emma said, and there was pain in her voice. Not judgment, just sadness. Alexander ran a hand through his hair, feeling control slip away. I didn't know. Now you do. Emma gently placed her hand on his arm. And there's still time. He looked at her, really looked, for the first time. He saw the kindness in her eyes, the quiet strength, the way she carried her own scars but still had room to care for others. Why do you care? He asked, genuinely confused. You barely know me. I've been rude to you from day one. Why are you doing this? Emma smiled sadly. Lies too late that work, money, success, none of it matters when you're alone. And I don't want you to make the same mistakes I made. There was something in her voice that made Alexander realize she wasn't just talking about him. She was talking about herself, too. You lost someone. It wasn't a question. Emma nodded slowly. My mother. 5 years ago. She spent her last months asking me to visit more, to take a weekend off work and go see her. But I was so busy trying to prove I was good enough, that I deserved the promotion that never came, that I kept putting it off. Her voice broke, and then there was no later. Alexander felt something break inside him. Emma discreetly wiped away a tear. So when Eleanor told me, I promised myself I wouldn't let it happen again, not with her, and not with you. They stood there in silence, side by side, while the snow continued to fall. And then Alexander did something he hadn't done in years. He let the armor fall, just for a moment, just long enough to whisper, I don't know if I can. I don't know how to go back. Emma held his hand. You don't need to go back. You just need to start over, now. In the days that followed, something changed. Alexander started showing up more, not just observing from a distance, but actually participating. He helped Eleanor and Emma set up the giant tree in the main room. He hung lights on the porch. He even tried decorating cookies, with disastrous results that made all three laugh until their stomachs hurt. Emma watched every subtle change, the way he looked at Eleanor more attentively, how he listened to her stories instead of just nodding while checking emails, how he was gradually learning to be present. But then came the night that changed everything. It was the eve of the party Eleanor had planned for the hotel staff. She and Emma had spent the day decorating the property's event hall, preparing food, organizing music. Alexander had helped with logistics, coordinating transportation, ensuring everyone could attend. Everything was ready. But when evening came, an unexpected blizzard descended on Vermont. The roads became impassable. The power went out. Eleanor was visibly upset. It was the only thing I wanted, to see everyone together again, like the old days. Emma looked around. The room was dark, lit only by candles in the fireplace. Snow was falling heavily outside. And then she had an idea. Eleanor, she said softly, may I try something? The older woman looked at her confused. What do you have in mind, dear? Emma smiled. Do you trust me? 20 minutes later, Emma had gathered everyone on the property. Eleanor, Alexander, 3 employees who lived nearby and had managed to arrive before the storm worsened, and the caretaker with his wife. She asked everyone to sit in a circle around the fireplace. She distributed blankets. She served hot chocolate she'd prepared in the kitchen. And then, in a soft, clear voice, she began to tell stories. Christmas stories, funny stories, heartwarming stories. Stories about family, about love, about second chances. And something magical happened. People began to relax, to laugh, to share their own stories. The caretaker told about the Christmas he proposed to his wife. Eleanor reminisced about the first Christmas she'd spent with her husband. The employees shared childhood memories. And Alexander just listened. Emma watched him discreetly. He sat a little apart, but his eyes shone in the firelight. And there was something different there. Something softer, more human. When Eleanor began recounting the last Christmas she'd spent with her son, Alexander's father, before he died, the silence in the room grew heavy with emotion. He was so tired, Eleanor said softly, but he insisted on putting up the tree with me. He said it was the little moments that mattered, not the big deals, not the money, just being together. She looked at Alexander with tears in her eyes. I think that was the last time I truly saw him happy. Alexander stood abruptly and left the room. Emma hesitated, then followed. She found him on the back deck, hands resting on the railing, shoulders tense. The snow had stopped, and the moon illuminated everything with silvery light. He died because he was exhausted, Alexander said without turning around. And I became exactly like him. Emma approached slowly. No, you became what you thought you needed to be. But there's still time to choose differently. He finally turned, and Emma saw tears in his eyes. For the first time, Alexander Whitmore was completely vulnerable. "I'm so scared," he whispered, "of stopping and realizing I've wasted everything, that I've built something empty." Emma cupped his face with both hands. "You haven't wasted anything. You just forgot to live while you were building. But Eleanor is still here. Your family is still here. And you still have time." And then, without thinking, without planning, Alexander pulled Emma close and hugged her as if she were the only thing keeping him standing. She returned the embrace, feeling his body tremble against hers. And in that moment, something changed between them. Something profound. Something neither was ready to name, but both felt with every fiber of their being. When they finally separated, Alexander looked into her eyes and whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me." Emma smiled through her own tears. "I never would." If this story touched a wound, tell me, at what point in your life did you start believing you weren't enough? Write in the comments. Your feelings matter and they're welcome here, without judgment, without rushing, just acceptance. The following days passed like a fever dream, intense, fast, filled with an energy Emma had never felt before. Alexander was different, still serious, still focused, but now there was something more. He laughed more easily. He stopped to chat with staff. He helped Eleanor in the kitchen without needing persuasion, and he looked at Emma in a way that made her heart race every time their eyes met. They didn't talk about that night on the deck, about the embrace, about the tears, about the raw vulnerability that had passed between them like an electric current. But they didn't need to. It was all there, suspended in the air between them, changing how they moved around each other. Eleanor watched everything with a gleam in her eyes. She said nothing, but Emma knew the woman noticed. Eleanor saw everything, and she was pleased. 2 days before Christmas, Alexander announced he wanted to do something special. "The storm has passed. The roads are clear," he said over breakfast. "I want to throw a party for the employees. The right way. The way my grandmother always did." Eleanor dropped her cup, eyes wide. "Are you serious?" "Completely." Alexander looked at Emma. "If you'll help me, I don't know how to do this alone." Emma felt something explode in her chest. "Of course I'll help." They spent the next 2 days in constant motion. They called all the hotel staff, more than 50 people, and invited them to the Christmas Eve party. They decorated the event hall with more lights, more garlands, more life. They prepared enough food to feed a small army. And Alexander, for the first time in 10 years, canceled all his meetings and focused entirely on creating something beautiful. Emma watched him transform with each passing hour. The weight he carried on his shoulders was lessening. The walls around him were crumbling. And in their place, a man was emerging whom she was beginning to know and to deeply admire. On Christmas Eve morning, Emma was finishing setting the tables when Alexander appeared behind her. "Can I talk to you? Privately?" She turned, noticing something different in his voice, something nervous. "Of course." He led her to the office, the same place where he'd hidden for so many days. But now it seemed different, less cold, less intimidating. Alexander closed the door and stood still for a moment as if gathering courage. "I need to tell you something," he began, "and I don't quite know how." Emma felt her heart race. "It's okay. You can tell me." He took a deep breath. "When you arrived here, I thought you were just another one of my grandmother's crazy ideas, another attempt to make me go back to being who I was. And I resisted, with everything I had." Emma listened in silence, absorbing every word. "But you didn't give up," he continued, eyes fixed on her. "You weren't intimidated. You didn't treat me like a lost cause. You just stayed. You reminded me what it is to feel, what it is to be present, what it is to live." Emma felt tears burning her eyes. "And I know you came here to help my grandmother. I know this has an end date, but I need you to know," his voice broke, "that you changed my life. In 2 weeks, you've done more for me than any therapist, any counselor, anyone has tried to do in 10 years. Emma couldn't hold back her tears. "And I don't want you to leave," he said, and there was so much fear in his voice. "I don't want to go back to living that way. I don't want to lose this. I don't want to lose you." Emma covered her mouth with her hand, trying to control the emotion threatening to overflow. Alexander moved closer until he was just inches away. "Emma, I know I don't have the right to ask this. I know I was cold, distant, difficult, but please." He held her hands gently as if they were the most precious thing in the world. "Give me a chance to show you who I can be. To show you that you didn't save me alone. You made me want to save myself." Emma looked into his eyes and saw everything: fear, hope, vulnerability, and something deeper, something that made her heart want to burst with intensity. "I don't want to leave either," she whispered. "I changed here too. I found something I didn't know I was looking for." Alexander closed his eyes in relief and rested his forehead against hers. And then, slowly and carefully, as if holding something fragile, he tilted his face and kissed her. It was a gentle kiss, full of promise, full of everything unsaid, full of new beginnings and second chances. When they parted, both were crying and smiling at the same time. "Stay with me," Alexander whispered, "at least until we figure out what this means." "I'll stay," Emma promised. That night, the party happened, and it was magical. The hall was filled with employees, their families, friends. Lights twinkled everywhere. Music played softly. The food was plentiful and delicious. And for the first time in 10 years, there was genuine laughter, warm embraces, and a sense of community that had been absent for so long. Eleanor was radiant, circulating among people, hugging, chatting, laughing. Emma watched from afar, feeling deep satisfaction at having helped bring this back. But it was when Alexander stepped onto a small makeshift stage that everything truly changed. He hadn't warned them he was going to do this. Not Eleanor, not Emma. The hall gradually fell silent as people realized he wanted to speak. Alexander held the microphone, clearly uncomfortable but determined. "Good evening, everyone." His voice echoed through the hall. "I know many of you must be surprised to see me here, and even more surprised to see me organizing a party." Some nervous laughter. "For the past 10 years, he continued, I believed the best way to honor my family, to honor this business, was through efficiency, profit, growth. And we achieved all of that. But in the process, I forgot something fundamental." He paused, looking around, making eye contact with familiar faces. "I forgot about you. I forgot that this place isn't just a hotel. It's a family. And you aren't just employees. You are the heart of this place." Emma saw tears on some faces. "So I want to apologize," Alexander said, his voice thick with emotion, "for being distant, for cutting traditions that meant something to you, for putting numbers above people." Eleanor had her hand over her heart, crying openly. "And I want to thank 2 extraordinary women." He looked at Eleanor. "My grandmother, who never gave up on me, even when I deserved for her to give up." Eleanor blew him a kiss. "And Emma." He searched for her in the hall. When their eyes met, the world seemed to stop. "Who reminded me that success without humanity isn't success. It's just loneliness." Emma felt tears streaming freely. "So this Christmas," Alexander continued, turning to everyone, "isn't just about a party. It's about a new beginning. It's about bringing back what we lost, and about building something better, together." The hall erupted in applause. People stood, hugged each other, cried, laughed. And for the first time in a long time, that place felt like home again. Alexander stepped down from the stage and went straight to Emma. He said nothing. He just hugged her, holding her close, burying his face in her hair. "Thank you," he whispered, "for everything." Emma cupped his face, forcing him to look at her. "You did this yourself. I just reminded you of who you've always been." "Then remind me every day," he said, "because I never want to forget again." And there, in the middle of the party, surrounded by lights, music, and happy people, they kissed again. Not with the hesitation of the first time, but with the certainty of those who had finally found what they were looking for. Eleanor watched from afar, tears of joy streaming down her face. Her grandson had returned, and she knew with absolute certainty that Emma Carter hadn't just saved a Christmas. She'd saved a life. 3 months later, Emma stood on the porch of the Vermont property, watching the snow slowly melt under the weak March sun. The landscape was changing, white giving way to the timid green of spring beginning to emerge on the mountains. She smiled, thinking about how her own life had changed as much as that landscape. After that magical Christmas night, Eleanor had made a request Emma never expected to receive. "Darling," the woman had said, holding her hands with that maternal warmth Emma hadn't felt in so long. "I want you to stay, not just for a few weeks. I want you to join the family, officially." Emma had been speechless. "I need someone who understands the heart of this business," Eleanor explained. "Someone who can balance efficiency with humanity. Someone who reminds my grandson, and all of us, what truly matters." She smiled. "And I think that person is you." And so, Emma Carter had accepted the position of Director of Experience and Culture at Whitmore Hotels. A position created especially for her. A position that allowed her to travel between properties, get to know the teams, reintroduce traditions, create employee wellness programs, and ensure the heart of the company would never be forgotten again. But more than that, she'd found a home. Not just on the Vermont property where she now had her own room. A room Alexander had insisted on decorating personally with everything she loved. But a home in the deepest sense. A place where she was seen, valued, loved. The door behind her opened, and familiar arms wrapped around her from behind. "What are you thinking about?" Alexander murmured against her hair. Emma leaned back against him, feeling the warmth of his body. "About how life can change on a flight." He chuckled softly. "A very specific turbulence. The best turbulence of my life." Emma turned in his arms, looking into his eyes. And what she saw there still surprised her every day. Love. True. Deep. Transformative. Alexander had kept his word. He hadn't gone back to being that cold, distant man. He still worked hard, but now he knew when to stop. He knew when to prioritize people over numbers. He knew when Eleanor needed his presence, when employees needed his attention, and when Emma simply needed him to be there, present, real. "Eleanor is waiting for you inside," he said, kissing her forehead. "Something about planning the next big tradition." Emma laughed. "She never stops, does she?" "Neither do you," Alexander said, with that smile that now came so easily. "You two are dangerous together." They entered hand in hand and found Eleanor in the living room, surrounded by papers, old photos, and a gleam in her eyes that revealed she was planning something good. "Ah, perfect. You two." She gestured for them to sit. "I've been thinking. Christmas was wonderful, but what about Easter? And Thanksgiving? And the birthdays of longtime employees?" Emma and Alexander exchanged an amused glance. "Grandma," Alexander began. But Eleanor interrupted. "Don't grandma me in that tone. You gave me my grandson back. You gave me hope again. Now I want to make sure that doesn't get lost. I want to document everything. I want to create a real legacy." Emma felt her heart clench with emotion. "Eleanor, that's beautiful. And I want you to lead this, darling." Eleanor held Emma's hand. "You have the gift of seeing what matters, of turning simple moments into memories that last forever." Emma looked at Alexander, who nodded encouragingly. "I would love to," she said, feeling tears burning her eyes. That night, after Eleanor went to bed, Emma and Alexander sat in front of the fireplace, now one of their favorite traditions. "Are you happy?" he asked suddenly. Emma looked at him, surprised. "Extremely. Why?" He hesitated, as if choosing his words carefully. "Because sometimes I still can't believe you chose to stay. Chose to stay with me." Emma cupped his face in her hands, forcing him to look into her eyes. "Don't you understand yet?" "What?" "You were never the problem, Alexander," she said softly. "You were just lost, and so was I. We found each other at the right time, in the right place, in the right way. He closed his eyes, absorbing the words. You know what I learned here? Emma continued. That it's not about deserving love, recognition, or worth. It's not about being enough for others. It's about finding people who see us as we truly are, wounded, imperfect, scared, and who choose to stay anyway. Alexander opened his eyes, and there was so much love there that Emma felt her heart overflow. Eleanor saw that in me on that plane, Emma said. You saw it in me when I arrived here. And I saw it in you, the man who was hiding behind all those defenses. And now? He asked. Now, Emma smiled. We just keep choosing each other, every day, in the little things, in the difficult moments, in the new beginnings. Alexander pulled her close and kissed her, a slow kiss, full of silent promises. When they parted, he whispered, Then I choose you, today, tomorrow, always. And I choose you, Emma replied. 6 months later, during a visit to one of the coastal hotel properties, Emma was giving a talk to new employees about company culture when her phone vibrated. It was a message from Eleanor. Darling, you saved my family. Now let me save a piece of yours. Look at the attached photo. Emma opened the image and immediately felt tears well up. It was an old photograph, faded, yellowed with age, of her mother, young and smiling, in front of a small house Emma recognized immediately. It was her childhood home, the house her mother had loved so much. Another message arrived. Alexander found out it was for sale. We bought it. It's yours now. So you can always have a piece of her with you. Emma had to leave the room, tears streaming freely. She called Eleanor immediately, unable to form words. Breathe, darling, Eleanor said from the other end in that warm voice. You've given us so much. Let us give you this. I don't know what to say, Emma finally managed to whisper. Say nothing. Just live. Love. Be happy. That's all your mother would have wanted. That night, Emma sat on the deck of the Vermont property, her favorite spot, gazing at the stars. Alexander joined her, covering them both with a thick blanket. Eleanor told me about the house, he said softly. Emma nodded, still processing. Why did you do this? Because you gave us something priceless, he replied. You gave us back ourselves. Emma turned to look at him. I love you, she said, simply, without fear, without doubt. Alexander smiled, that genuine smile he only showed her. I love you too, more than I ever thought possible. They sat there, embraced under the stars, thinking about how turbulence, a gesture of kindness, a transformative Christmas had changed everything. And Emma realized something fundamental. She'd spent so much of her life thinking she wasn't enough, that she didn't deserve to be seen, that she needed to prove her worth. But the truth Eleanor, Alexander, and this place had taught her, was simple and powerful. She had always been enough. She had always been special. She had always been worthy of love. She just needed to be around the right people to finally see it. And now, wrapped in the arms of the man she loved, part of a family that had chosen her, with a purpose that filled her soul, Emma Carter finally understood. Sometimes the greatest miracle isn't finding what we're looking for. It's discovering that what we were seeking was inside us all along. We just needed someone to help us remember. If this story moved you, subscribe now to help spread the word about the channel and so you don't miss our next stories. Also, leave a comment telling me where you're listening from. And remember, you were never invisible. You were just waiting to be seen by the right people.